In this video, I'm going to talk about digitizing and embroidering of hats. A lot of people want to do hats, and they think that it's just as easy as embroidering in a flat. Unfortunately, hats aren't necessarily flat, so they take a little extra care in order to embroider them with success. So a lot of people who then go and buy a big industrial embroidery machine, or even just a domestic multi-needle machine, don't quite understand what they're getting into and think that this is easy. And it is easy as long as you understand those key differences. To start, let's go over the anatomy of a hat and why they're so special. Hats come in different varieties, from trucker to dad caps to bucket hats. The anatomy is pretty much the same across all hat types, but their structure is what will differ between them. This is no different than sweatshirts versus t-shirts in terms of selecting the right stabilizer. Hats are made up of several panels that start out wide at the base and taper to a button at the top. Because of this, it gives hats a round shape that is really hard to lay flat in an embroidery hoop. That's why we need to embroider them in the round. I personally prefer hats that have a center seam in the front, as it makes it a lot easier to align a centered design. The bill is the hard curved piece of material that projects off the front of the hat, while the back of the hat has the adjustment region. The crown of the hat is the front region that goes from the base of the bill all the way up to the top center, typically where you'd find the button that hides the panel connection seams. The crown is the most important part, as you'll be embroidering to that area and need to be aware of how large your design is going to be. As far as positioning goes, it's a good guideline to try to keep your design no less than 1 inch away from the brim and under 2 inches in height. Even if the hat is structured with buckram, you still don't want to go too high up on the crown, as the design will quickly lose registration in that area. More on registration in a bit. We're going to start with a design I already have digitized, but not optimized. If you want to learn more about digitizing from the beginning, I'll leave a link to my beginner's video in the description below. It's one thing to have a design plotted out for machine embroidery. It's a totally different thing to optimize it. Optimizing will ensure that you don't need as many jumps, reducing the time in moving the hoop to the next starting point and reducing the likelihood of losing registration. So now that we've covered these points, we can start to do optimization to make sure this will work well for hat embroidery. Registration is having the needle and work area in sync with each other. When you lose registration, you'll commonly see this as a fill stitch not fully covering the support stitching beneath the fill area. This can be due to a number of factors, but in hats, it's primarily an issue with not digitizing correctly, as well as not hooping it tightly enough. Remember that we should be embroidering from the bottom up and the center out. So let's get started with the optimizations. Hatch has a tendency to move the start and stop stitching points automatically if you shuffle designs around, so the first step is actually to get the sequence in the correct order for a hat before messing around with adjusting the points. You can find the sequence list off to the right. Usually it's open automatically. If not, you can go up to Window and find it in there. So going from the bottom up to the center out is something that you kind of have to do simultaneously. That means that I'm not just going to go bottom up like this, but I will go bottom out like that, and then work my way up. So with that thought in mind, what we want to do now is to make sure that this is the first item that gets stitched out. It's not too far from the top, but if you scroll through here, everything's kind of, I don't know, all over the place. So I'm going to take that, and I'm going to take these two objects, and I'm just going to grab them and drag them up, if it will let me. It's not going to let me, so I'm going to have to scroll up a bit and drag them. I have this kind of blown up a bit so everybody can see it a lot easier while I'm doing the recording. So I just pull it up like this to make those the first two things that get stitched out. And you can pretty much ignore this. This is just the artwork that I used as the tracing guide. So now we have this and this. Now, this is currently set to be the first thing that gets stitched. So I'm going to slide it down, or slide that up over it, and swap them. But you see how it kind of messes up the look of it? Sometimes it's okay to not have to do that. So we're going to go ahead and swap those back like that, because this area is going to be small enough that it's not going to be such a big deal. What I'll do now, though, is I will have it so that it stitches the slant first, the bar second, and then I'm going to have this guy come in first. So, or third rather. So we're going to grab that and we're going to move it up until it is the third item that gets stitched. So 1, and then 2, and then 3. This ensures, again, you're still in the center, but you're moving side to side. So now that we have this one done, we're gonna go way back over here to this guy and let that one be the 4th item. So I'll go over to my sequence and I'll start to drag it up. You can use the buttons. If you are gonna move things that are multiple, it doesn't really move all of them at the same time. So just a note. So there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to be far enough off to the right of the design now that I feel safe enough going ahead and doing this first and then that one second. So I'm going to find these 2 items like that. And the first thing I'm going to do is to make sure that I'm going to grab them like that, and I'm just going to drag them up and scroll until I get to where I need to be. So there we go. So now we have those, and just to double check everything, we'll do that and that. Now, again, this is going to be tightly compact enough that I don't need to worry about it kind of gathering up the fabric or losing registration, because it is actually a fairly small design. Now imagine, if you will, now the hoop is going to rotate on the machine to get the hat into another position. So we need to rotate it all the way from here over to this fella here. So we're gonna find that one. Basically, you can click on it. It will highlight it in the sequence, just in case you haven't seen that. And I'm going to click and I'm going to drag it up. And I love that I have these little guys here as kind of a reference of where my bottom is. But if you want to, you can actually like set them as a group, just so it's easier for you to identify. Or you can even change the thread color so that it's easier, like visually, to go, aha, that is the beginning. Now I'm not going to leave it like that, obviously, but it does help you kind of have a visual reference in the sequence to know where it was that you started building upon. And then we'll grab this last remaining one here and drag it all the way up because it would be next in the list. So to review, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, and an 8. And that basically covers the CSL in Aurebesh on the bottom row. You can treat this whole logo section here kind of as its own thing. So we're going to leave this alone and instead go up and start with the S. The S is comprised of 3 parts. So we have the little end guys here and then the actual snaky looking thing there. The end caps actually need to go on top of the S curve, and that's all right. So we're going to do the S because it will stabilize everything in place, and then also grab the end caps and drag those all up at the same time. So what will happen at this point is once we finish that bottom row, it's going to start with the S, which will stabilize the initial area, and then we'll put on the little end caps. What I do want to make sure of, though, is that that first end cap is at the bottom, and then the top one will be second. From there, let's kind of figure out where it is we want to go. If we go off to the left, then that means we need to kind of start thinking about the logo. However, if we go off to the right, then we can do the L and then come back over, do the C, and then close out with the logo, which will have minimal moves. So let's do that. So I'm going to highlight all of these parts by holding the Shift button and clicking, or not. I'll just go over here. Never mind. I keep forgetting sometimes it's fussy. So this will be first, that will be second, and that will be third. Now, I do like the way that that looks. However, I do feel that starting way over here and then going back to this might be problematic. So for this shape, as opposed to what happened with this shape, because it was just the one going out and I can kind of handle that with the start and stop stitching, I think I would rather do something that allows me to jump from here to here and then kind of move over in that direction to start the stitching, because it will also tack down a stitch that makes that area secure. So to do that, we're going to select our Digitize Open shape by clicking on that, and you just need a single run. And we're going to go at the top here, and we're just going to click and basically just make a little bit of a stitch that's on the inside, and you know it's going to get hidden by everything. And that will help the machine kind of know, okay, I'll go from here to here and then I'll walk my way over this way. But while doing that, also stabilize the region. Now you may have noticed that this stitch is now on top of everything. That's because new stitches go to the bottom of the sequence. To move it, you do it like anything else. You're gonna click it and drag it until you're at that last end cap. So it'll go from here to here. And now I feel confident selecting this end cap for the L and everything else for the L by shift clicking them, and now dragging them up to be just after that stitch. Bear in mind that your start and stop stitch points are probably going to be all kinds out of whack right now, but don't worry about it, that's the last bit. Now at this point, the machine head is going to rotate over so that we can do C. So we're going to find where C is, and you'll see that C also has an end cap on it, just like the S. And it is afterward, which is fine because the C curve here is going to stabilize the area. So we're going to take that and we're going to pick it up and move it up to the top here. And that's it for the lettering. From here, we can basically optimize everything by just going right to left. So let's start with this little doodad here. We're going to drag that up, and you see we're already very close to the bottom now. And then just while we're here, we're going to grab that dot, that little dot, and move that up. Whoop, not that far. There we go. It should be after we do that first little curve. Then we can take this skinny little black piece here and move that. And now we can do this one that we had set in orange. And of course we don't need it to be orange anymore, so we'll set it back to black because the last stitch is already there at the bottom. Now that we have everything in the correct sequence, we can go back and look at the start and stop points to make sure they're appropriate for hat embroidery. Go ahead and scroll back up to the top of your design and select the item. You can press H to set it in reshape mode, or you can just go up to the toolbar and click reshape. And then we'll just zoom in with our mouse wheel, and you can see that basically the start and the stop are here. We actually want them to be bottom. So we're gonna pull that down here to the bottom and then leave this one also down here to the bottom. That's because it's going to start stitching this guy next. So then we'll click on the next one, and you'll see like it basically, if it starts and it stops up here in the middle, what it'll do is it'll start and it will run stitch down here and start like filling in here and then go up to the top and fill down here to meet. And you don't want that, especially the satin stitch, because you'll actually see that. So we're going to move the start and stop to both be there, because we're then going to hop over to here. So now click that guy and see this is fine because we'll start and we'll stop that way. And if we scroll over, we can see that then we're going to start this next one. So same thing. Whoop. Ah, same thing. We want to go down here for the start and also for the stop, because we don't want it to stop way up here and then have to move all the way over here. The more you move with the hat, the less or the more chance of a loss of registration is going to happen. You'll continue to work through the sequence and making sure that the start stitches are at the bottom, center bottom as much as you can muster, and then moving out and having the stop stitch kind of on the same side as where the next stitch is going to go. Just work your way through the design and make those adjustments as necessary. Use the player at the very end to see if you have anything that you need to kind of work out or if there were any mistakes along the way. Now that everything has been arranged, we can take this to the embroidery machine. First, we need to hoop the hat. Hat hoops aren't too different from regular hoops, only cylindrical in shape. I'll be embroidering to a dad cap, which is unstructured, so I still want at least one layer of medium tearaway stabilizer. I'm going to hoop the stabilizer first. The next thing I like to do if I'm embroidering to an unstructured cap is to spray just a little bit of basting spray to the stabilizer. It helps keep it flush to the fabric so it doesn't slip around while the head is being rotated. Next, flip the sweatband down so it's facing the bill of the cap and gently move the hat onto the hooping station while holding that sweatband out of the way. Wiggle and fluff out the fabric of the hat around the remainder of the hooping station while keeping the center front facing up. The trick to getting a tight fit on the hat hoop is to pull the hat down and hold it down while snapping the upper ring in place. I'm using the Hoop Tech Gen 2 hat hoop for my Ricoma MT-1501, which has this handy little handle thing. It's very quick to hoop and worth every penny, but if you don't have this, you really just have to grab the part of the hat hanging below the hooping station and pull it taut. While doing this, you may need to smooth out and adjust the hat to get rid of any creases or wrinkles. On an unstructured cap such as this, a wrinkle can turn into a catastrophe while embroidering. Once everything is taut and smooth like a football player's behind, you can pull the hoop ring over the top of the hat and snap it in place. It should be hooped such that the frontmost part of the ring is in or right next to the brim seam. And here's what everything should look like once you remove the hoop from its station. When snapping the hoop into the machine, it helps to turn it clockwise so the hat is on its side, and then wiggle it through. Some hoops are less troublesome with this. The Hoop Tech Gen 2 is a little beefy, so I had to wiggle it more than usual. Then just jiggle it in to make sure that it's in the hooks on the hat driver and push in to lock it into the snaps. I have a more industrial style machine with no laser pointers or cameras, but I actually find this technique to be more straightforward. You can lower the presser foot of the needle down to see if the needle will strike on the center marking. For me, this marking is the center where the front is going to meet between two panels. When I did bucket hats, I marked it with washi tape. The Ricomas also have the ability to trace the rectangle around the design, as well as do a more direct trace around the design itself. This is important so you know that your presser foot isn't going to accidentally smack the front of that frame. From here, just hit the start button and let the design stitch out. As it stitches, you'll understand why it's so important to follow the bottom up, center out mantra when digitizing for hats. If you had started from the top and moved downward, it would have eventually gathered up the loose fabric of the hat and shifted it down, causing creases and wrinkles in the design. And here are the results of all of that hard work. And that's how I got this hat, which conveniently was available at the beginning of the video. Feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave any comments and questions that you have below. Thanks again. Bye.